Have you ever been told if you can be successful at one thing, you can be successful at anything? Or maybe you've heard someone say discipline is discipline. If you have it in one area, you'll have it everywhere. Sounds good in theory, right? But then why do so many high performers in their careers struggle in their personal relationships? Why does someone who's meticulously organized at work still have an apartment that looks like a tornado hit it? Why does a person with rock solid willpower in the gym struggle to follow through on their creative goals? If you've ever wondered why certain skills don't seem to carry over the way you expect, this video is for you. Because the truth is, you're not as consistent as you think you are. In this video, you'll learn why being successful in one area doesn't automatically translate to success in others. The hidden reason you struggle with consistency in different parts of your life, and how emotional training, not just discipline, determines whether a skill transfers. There's this assumption that discipline is like a muscle. If you strengthen it in one area, you should be able to flex it anywhere. But that's not how it works. Let's say you're someone who's incredibly focused at work. You hit deadlines, stay on top of projects, and people rely on you to get things done. So why is it that when it comes to your personal relationships, you procrastinate on difficult conversations, avoid conflict, or struggle to show up with the same level of consistency? It's because discipline isn't just about action. It's about the emotional framework that supports the action. At work, maybe you've trained yourself to manage stress and pressure with a clear, logical approach. But relationships, that's an entirely different emotional landscape. The triggers are different. The stakes feel more personal. The way you process emotions in one area doesn't automatically translate to another. Think about it. If discipline were purely about willpower, why do some of the most physically disciplined athletes struggle with binge eating? Why do some of the most dedicated entrepreneurs neglect their health? The answer isn't a lack of effort. It's a lack of emotional training in that specific domain. Here's what most people don't realize. Skills don't transfer, emotional patterns do. Every area of life has its own set of emotional requirements. You've trained yourself, consciously or unconsciously, to handle stress one way in business, another way in relationships, and another way in personal habits. Let's go back to the example of someone who's disciplined in their fitness routine, but struggles with money management. The gym requires a tolerance for physical discomfort, repetition, and delayed gratification. But money, that taps into entirely different emotional triggers: fear, security, self-worth, and long-term trust in oneself. If those emotional patterns haven't been trained in the financial realm, it doesn't matter how disciplined they are in fitness, the skills won't transfer. This is why some of the most successful people in one area of life can feel completely lost in another. It's not about capability, it's about emotional conditioning. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming I'm the kind of person who follows through, or I'm just not disciplined, as if identity is fixed across all areas. But here's something to consider. You don't have one identity. You have multiple depending on the context. Maybe in your career, you see yourself as someone who takes initiative and leads, but in personal growth, you hesitate, second guess yourself, or avoid discomfort. That's not because you're lazy or inconsistent. It's because you've emotionally trained for success in one domain, but haven't built that training in another. I once worked with someone who is a top executive, disciplined, structured, a natural leader. But in his personal life, he avoided difficult conversations like the plague. He'd ghost people rather than address issues directly. It wasn't a discipline problem. It was an emotional regulation issue. He'd built resilience for pressure at work, but in personal relationships, his nervous system was trained to equate confrontation with danger. Once he recognized that, everything shifted. He didn't try to borrow work discipline for relationships. He trained an entirely new emotional response for that specific area. So here's something to reflect on. Where in your life do you assume discipline or consistency should transfer, But it doesn't. And what if the issue isn't discipline at all, but the emotional training underneath it? Think about that for a second. I was talking to someone recently who's been an athlete his entire life, structured, consistent, and committed. But when it came to building his own business, he was stuck. He kept saying, I don't get it. I pushed through in training. Why can't I push through here? When we unpacked it, he realized his relationship with effort in sports was different from effort in business. He was emotionally trained to handle physical fatigue, but he had never trained himself to navigate uncertainty and risk. Once he saw that, he stopped beating himself up for not being disciplined enough and started developing emotional resilience in a completely new way. I'd love to hear from you. Where in your life do you notice this playing out? Are there areas where you thought skills would transfer, but they didn't? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. If this conversation resonated with you and you want to dive deeper into how emotional training works, I've put together a system that helps you strengthen this awareness and develop real, lasting change. The way we train emotionally determines everything: how we show up, how we follow through, and where we succeed. If that's something you want to explore further, check out the link below. And if you're into content like this, you can find me on Instagram at Mike Wang Coaching, where I share more insights on personal development, mindset, and emotional mastery. I also send out a weekly newsletter packed with ideas to help you navigate this stuff in a real, practical way. Feel free to subscribe if that sounds helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.